let's get this new Lambretta build underway. And firstly, I just want to look at the extra parts I've got since the last video. Go and check that out if you haven't seen that already. Some side panels, a pair of these. They're repops, I believe, a little bit dented, not too bad shape, but I only paid £50 for the pair of panels. Pretty pleased with that. Picked up some rear floorboards. Now these are actually more expensive than the panels. They are new, remade things. These were £60, I think, for the pair. A friend of mine, Steve, at the Lambretta Club in Bristol, gave me this metal front mudguard, so really pleased about that. Thanks, Steve. So we can ditch the fiberglass one. And also I have got a loop as well, which is over there. It needs a bit of tidying up, but that will go on as well. Now I do want this scooter to look stock Series 1 from the outside, but the big plan here, the big reveal, is that I want this to be an all air ride suspension scooter. I'm not sure if this will be the first full air ride Lambretta on the planet or not. I have seen, I think it's in Germany, an air ride Vespa which lays out on the ground, and I have seen in an Asian country, not sure whether that was Thailand or Indonesia or somewhere, there's a guy that's fitted some air ride on one of those, you know, plastic Lambretta things, whatever they're called. And it does move a little bit, but it definitely doesn't lay flat on the ground. But I do want this to lay flat, completely flat, frame to the ground. So let's just have a quick look at how we're going to go about that. Now the quick, easy way to get an air ride suspension on the Lambretta would be to have one of these shocks. Now these, they actually fit on Harley Davidsons. You know, it's not far off, is it? Kind of looks like it would work all right. Probably have to change the bushes, and that would definitely get the back end down a little bit. But these, when they're fully compressed, get to about that length. Now, if we have a look on here, that's fully maxed out, and it's given us what, 55 millimeters of drop. I don't think is gonna look that impressive. And when you put the panel on, the back of the scooter is like, what, 220 mil from the ground. So yeah, 55 mil drop there. It's just not really going to give me what I'm after. The other issue with how the Lambretta works in its original state as well is that the pivot point is here on the engine. That as the wheel goes up, the front of the engine comes down. So it gets to a point where the front of the engine here and the exhaust coming out of the barrel there is actually going to hit the ground, which again won't allow me to get this frame right to the ground. So my plan is to change this pivot point from where it is originally to up here somewhere. I'm going to try and keep this pivot point to just inside where the loop is going to come up. And it's part of the reason I haven't fitted the loop on here already, because I kind of want to work out where that is and what bracket I need there to mount this engine. So I'm going to need to make like a cradle which holds the engine, a bit like an engine stand if you've seen one of those. So it'll mount to the engine, obviously the rear shock, on this point here, and carry on to the pivot point where it will then be suspended. And the idea is to fit an airbag here. So I have picked up an airbag. Now these normally work on a car, you know, 2 of them on the rear somewhere. It's quite a chunky thing, and the idea is that I mount that around there. So it'll be between the top of the loop and the new cradle I'm going to build for the engine, and they've got 110 mil, sorry, of lift. Now that again doesn't sound a lot because we've got 200 mil to go down at the back here, but if you can imagine with the pivot point there, 100 mil right at the front of the suspension there will equate to a lot more when it gets to the rear. So I'm thinking that should give me easily enough travel and get this frame like sat right on the ground. And the other thing stopping this engine obviously going right up into the loop that I'm going to fit is basically it's just going to hit on here. So the plan will be, once I've built the bracket and suspended the engine, that I'll literally cut this frame probably from around there, and this whole piece will come out. Does mean I'll need to support somehow these rear footboard supports, and I've got an idea to bring some bracing in here to do that. So yeah, there's quite a lot of modifications going to happen with this frame to make this all work. The first thing I want to do is make a start on this engine cradle, and I'm going to need to remove these old large engine mounts here because I want the cradle to locate the engine here, and these are just not going to work here. So I need to remove these and fit these small ones which just fit like inside there. And I'm just going to take the engine out of the frame just so we can get good access to this. Removing these engine mounts, I've got two bits of advice for you. Firstly, beg, borrow or steal one of these BGM puller installer tools, and I actually borrowed this off Andy from the Bristol Lambretta Club. Thanks, Andy. Second bit of advice is go and watch Kickback Garage video on this, doing the exact same thing. He's got a whole video there, it looks amazing. I've literally just gone and watched it myself, so I know how to do this. Next thing I need to do to reinstall the new mounts is heat this up here. These new engine mounts went in fine. I've just thrown the frame back on as well because I just now want to just get in my head how this engine cradle is going to work. So I bought a cheap 4-bar link kit thing, which is really again designed for a car, off of eBay. It's so cheap. Just to try and build this thing myself would cost more money with the tube and all the bushings, etc. And they obviously need cutting down to fit, but they would fit something like that on the engine with some tabs coming up from the engine here, welded on there, and the new pivot point is going to be here, which I want just inside the loop. So I think what I'm going to do is just cut this down to size a bit because it's interfering a bit with the back wheel, and just maybe throw these tabs on here, tack them in place, start getting an idea for how this is all going to go together. And once this cradle, if you like, is fixed to the frame and properly pivots, then I can actually cut all this frame part out here. And I'm going to pull this off for now and just, see if we can start work on this cradle. Just saw me using this new tool, hole cutter thing. It was another cheapie from Amazon. Not that accurate. In fact, it was cutting slightly off center. So I think if I had a washer in between this part and this part, that would just tilt that in. And I think that would be all it needs to actually center that. But also when it spins round, it was a little bit egg-shaped, if you like, I don't know. Not the best. I don't learn my lesson by buying cheap tools. I've welded these tabs. There'll be another tab on the inside as well, but I need to obviously cut out this part of the frame before I can get to the tab to fit there. You just saw me with the hole saw and a new tool I got, just cutting these bits here, which are gonna weld in. So that'll be super strong. I'll need to weld some tabs off of this frame, but I'm going to wait until I sit the loop in place, and then the bracket that holds the loop will also hold these and it'll all tie in. I don't seem to learn my lesson with buying cheap tools. They don't work very well, but you know, I don't do this 8 hours a day every day, so I just gonna need these tools occasionally, like the metal folder thing I brought. Anyway, one thing I am very pleased with is this little purchase over here, which is a new welding table. I've really been struggling in the past with old workbenches and crappy tables that I've had, so I have invested in this, which I'm really pleased with actually. It's super sturdy. Underneath there's like loads of reinforcing or strengthening, and these are like standard 16mm holes, which I bought a couple of clamps. I don't actually really know what I'm doing with this welding table, how to use it properly, because I'm completely self-taught, but these clamps seem to hold things down. I'm not sure they're the best, and I probably will need to buy some more clamps in the future, but until I start using it, I'm not kind of sure what clamps I want. I've been sidetracked. Back to this engine cradle thing. I just put some bolts in here so I can just keep everything square. That main bar's square there, and I've just taken loads of measurements, right angles. Because I know this welding table's nice and flat, obviously I can just push everything down and get everything square. This bolt here is holding this kind of true as well. So I'm just going to throw some tacks on this for now. I'm pretty pleased with how this engine cradle is turning out. I really need to chop this section of the frame out, but of course there's nothing then to mount the loop to, and I need to build onto the frame to support all the loop that's going to go there. My idea is to build a framework starting from the leg shield supports here, coming back and actually coming back into the frame. So this will be the structure then to support all the loop, etc. So to build this new kind of frame structure, I brought this 30 by 30mm tube, 3mm thick, pretty sturdy stuff. And the idea is I'm gonna weld this there. I might put an extra piece in the front, but it'll all be hidden because the footboard will go there, and it'll go underneath the footboard, and then I shall bring this support up. I'm not sure if any of that makes sense, but you'll see as I go along how it's going to come together, I hope. But first of all, before I do any of that, I think I'm going to take this frame outside and give it a wire brush off with my grinder, one of those heavy duty wire brush. I remember doing that on Oddbod when I built that, but this frame is so rusty, and if I just do odd bits just to weld to, it's going to take twice as long. So I think I'm going to wire brush the whole thing off and probably paint the whole thing with some weld through primer. It's pretty good stuff. I got a can of that, silver primer coloured, and that means I can weld to any part of it. I'm also going to want to mock up this new loop as well, so I can start thinking about the brackets which will mount that new pivot point for the engine. Welded up this frame. This is just temporary here just to keep it square, and I've actually just made this the exact width of these footboard supports. I tie into where the rear footboard fixes down and actually put some of this same metal up to support the top of the loop. Just tack this for now at the front because I don't want this to be seen obviously underneath the leg shields that come down. I'm not sure if it will or not, but I can always just bring these in further along or even a diagonal, etc. I think it needs something a bit beefier than these existing ones. But what I need to do actually is trim these existing supports down, and then the frame will drop down then into the correct position. I'm going to take this outside, wire brush it and give it some paint. And this is where we're up to. Now this has taken me hours to get to this stage, but 93.5785% of it was measuring and that's kind of difficult to film because you're in the moment with the measuring tape, and then to set up a camera, hit record. Yeah, so I haven't filmed a lot of it, and most of it is just checking things like these panel gaps that are correct. The original Lambretta frame is not that straight millimeter wise. It's all over the place. So yeah, this frame I've been offering up like 1,000 times and getting it just right, but it is all tacked in place now. I've cut off the existing leg shield supports here to fit the frame in there, tack welded it, and of course I've got the loop in place. Now I did put these bars here to line it up and hold it in place while I was checking these panel gaps. The big reveal. There you go, look at that thing. And I'll take this footboard off as well. Like I say, this frame that I've built is going to be pretty much hidden. And I've tried to kind of replicate, although it's exaggerated, by the original styling of the frame. So these bits here, obviously I've put in supporting this back end. It kind of mimics what the loop that the original frame had on it, etc. And these, although it looks a bit more like from a Series 3, it meant that I could literally chop the original frame in half, and that is all gone. And so now the engine is sat in its cradle. It's still supported at the moment because I haven't done the bracket from the rear suspension mount, if you like, to the new cradle, because I need to set that just right. So I'll get you in for a closer look. Yeah, I gave the old frame a good wire brush off and a quick coat of primer there. Just, I couldn't handle looking at that rust. But you can see here where I've cut these leg shield supports back. As I said, these were all up and down a bit. Like, I think this one was down on this side and this one was up. So, you know, the original frames weren't that great. So I've tweaked all that. The loop is there. Everything's just tacked in place for now. And the airbag will sit roughly in there. I need to weld a plate in there to take the bottom of it, and then a plate somewhere for the top of it as well. And if anyone's wondering, I mean, these link bars were built to hold up a, you know, like a 2-ton hot rod. So I don't think there's going to be any worry about that supporting this little scooter. Possibly I'm worried about the wheel doing this sideways. We'll have to see when we get it on the road. If it does sort of skit about left to right, then I might have to do some kind of crossbar to stop that happening. But yeah, until we get out on the road, I don't think this kind of thing's ever been done before, so we'll see what it's like. And also I need to put some shocks in as well, because the airbag is a bit like having a spring. But anyway, that's getting ahead of myself. Got this plate made up or cut out, and I gave it a bit of a clean up because it is an old bit of steel. It was actually part of the former gate. Now, if you haven't seen that video that I've got, check out that. But this was part of the bracket, so it's even got a little stamp in there, which is an Italian company that make gate parts. Anyway, I've cut that bit of steel out, giving it a clean up, and that is going to weld on there. I just need to clean up this engine cradle. I was thinking about sitting it in, but if I leave it on top there, it means the airbag can sort of position right up close. The further up here I can go with the airbag, the more articulation I'll get on the back. I'll take this cradle out. I'm going to fully weld up all these bars now and weld this plate on. Got this engine cradle thing fully welded up, all the round bar, top and bottom, because once this plate is welded on top, I wouldn't have been able to get to some of those welds. Yeah, that is rock solid now. That plate I've just tacked in place actually, just in case that needs to be moved. I don't think it will, but that's easy to weld up. I stuck a bit of weld through primer as well because it'd be difficult to get any paint into there. I'm going to throw that back into the frame there on the engine. I've just thrown on the forks and set this to the rough ride height, and my plan was to set the airbag just straight onto that plate there, and then the top mount would also be at that angle, but I think that looks a bit wonky, so I think I'm going to make a little bracket there and then have the airbag actually upright, and then the top mount will be easier to make. I need to really get this engine cradle at the exact angle it's going to be at, and that is all affected by how I mount it to the rear shock. So I think I'm going to set that first and connect it to the rear shock. When this is going to go up, it's going to hit this frame. I leave a bit of clearance for all the gear cables and the clutch cable, etc. But I think if I go to about there and then pie cut that, and then that will come down to there, and I can just weld it on there permanently. So I'm really happy with this down there, nice angle down to there. That I drilled out the end of this bar, so this actually fits up inside it, so by the time that's welded, that's going to be super strong. I did cut way too much out of this pie cut though, and that's just a lack of experience, so I'm going to have to fill the gap. I think there's a little shard of metal somewhere which I can weld back in there and make that all good. So just the right amount of clearance for the clutch lever, etc. But I think I'm just going to tack this up now, and you know, just in case I do need to change it at all. Got these brackets made up. This took way longer than it should have done, mainly because my equipment is so bad. Like that pillar drill is just rubbish. It just locks up all the time. I'm not sure if you can tell that on the camera. My drill bits are all blunt. So yeah, just keep buying the t-shirts, guys, and I might be able to afford some better tools. This bracket is going to go on the bottom. I've cut a big hole in this plate here so you can get a socket, and then just a single hole in that bracket which bolts into the airbag on the bottom, and that is angled obviously. I did actually, talking about tools, I had this old pitch finder, Digipass it's called, which is just rubbish. I mean, I doubted it for a long time, and then the battery just doesn't work. You sort of have to hold your finger on the battery compartment. Anyway, it's a load of rubbish. I did buy this new one, which is a Trend. Had loads of good reviews on the old Jungle website. It's a couple of degrees down, but I don't mind that too much. I could alter it a bit more, but as the suspension goes up and down, of course, this angle will go up and down as well. So I thought it being a couple of degrees down will actually, you know, and when the bag fully compresses as well, it'll actually be quite a bit the other way. So anyway, it's about there. So that needs to be welded on there. And for the top, I made this bracket. There's actually 2 bolts on the top of here. So basically a big hole for the air inlet to go in. And then, I don't know if you can see that, yeah, those 2 bolt holes. I've never used airbags before, it's all new to me. So I just assumed there'd be like a metric bolt to go in there, but they are not metric. In the end, I pulled out my stash of Imperial bolts, which came off the flathead V8 engine. So they seem to fit. If anyone knows what bolts these airbags are supposed to take. Are they all the same, the airbags, all different ones? The whole assembly is going to be a bit like that. The working height of the airbag is 152 millimeters. I think it can extend up to 175, and it compresses down to 65 mil. I think that would put a lot of stress on that rubber if you went right down to 65 mil. I did a few calculations, middle of the airbag, about 75 mil behind the pivot point, and there's actually 810 mil from the pivot point to the rear of the loop there. But I worked it out last night, and actually 110 mil of stroke at this position here would give me over 500 mil of travel right at that position there. So I should have, if I've done my calculations correctly, I should have way more travel than I'm ever going to need. 27 mil bar and 3 mil thick walls. It feels pretty sturdy. So I want to bend that to fit inside there. That's next job. I think I'm going to try and get that bent up first, and then what I'll do, this top bracket I'll notch around and weld into this bar, and it's going to be super strong if it all works out. I have made another purchase, and I've done my usual thing of buying the cheapest tool available on Amazon or eBay or wherever it was. I actually bent the rear tubes there on that frame, which are quite light gauge tubes, with my conduit bender. But I need something a bit more beefy, so I brought a hydraulic pipe bender to try and put this thing together, follow the instructions. Okay, so I don't want to speak too soon, but this thing feels pretty well made. It weighs an absolute ton. And in fact, so heavy that the box it came in is like a wooden box. Yeah, I mean, no cardboard is going to support that thing. You've got your different sort of fittings here for different size pipes. I mean, it's pretty rudimentary. You just stick whatever fitting you want on the end of this ram, stick your pipe in and bend it. I mean, it's like proper, yeah, old school sort of technology there, just using brute force. Saw me bending up these bars using the hydraulic bender there. I kept double checking that they sort of matched, and they are pretty much spot on. I was trying to follow this loop round, and you know what, I'm more than happy with that. I'll show on this side, it's just going to sit inside there. The only one bad thing is, yeah, I mismeasured, and so I didn't have quite enough pipe to go right to the end. So I've made up these outer pipes, if you like, which I'll just cut these off because I don't want to keep the bar away from the edge. I want that to fit nice and flush. I can weld that pipe to these. These will basically be invisible pretty much from the outside, and that'll give me more of a weld onto this part of the frame actually. So it actually fits really nicely. Look, it just tucks up under that bit as well. Got these bars in place and just put a few tacks on. Yeah, you can see what a tight fit it is already. 4 holes in each, so I can do some plug welds. I'll actually weld down these edges as well. There we have these finished bars with the sort of thicker piece welded on and ground off. Most of it's going to be hidden because it's right up under the frame anyway. You'll never ever see it. Yeah, let's get those up in the frame. Here's this top bracket for the airbag, and I've hacked out 4 sort of semicircles, if you like, which are going to go around those bars I fitted. I originally cut this to the width of the loop, and I might end up cutting this down because it doesn't need to stick out, so I could cut it back, but I'm going to leave it long for now because you never know, I might possibly hang the coil off of here. Could be a good position, rather than the coil being right back here. Also, there's space on the other side of the airbag. Maybe I build a battery box and hang that from this bracket or something. I don't know, but I can cut that down later, make it look pretty. I think for now I'm just going to tack it in place and then tack the bottom bracket in place as well, and that'll allow me to bolt the airbag in there. Just put a few tacks on that. That's the top airbag bracket, that's the bottom airbag bracket. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is chop out this old part of the loop and just get that tyre tucked up under there a bit further. Been doing a bit more tweaking, let's have a quick look at that. So underneath I've fully welded this in now, which is kind of, it supports both the loop and also ties the engine cradle mounts into. The new frame ties into the existing frame, these points here, but it goes all the way up there. Those bars come all the way back down to there and then ties back into the frame. So there's a massive kind of like loop which is all tied in together, kind of triangulated in some way, not really a triangle, but you know what I mean. Also, I just trimmed the original frame back a little bit as well. I just chucked a bit of this weld through primer because this engine cradle was just 3 different colours, so I just chucked a bit of that to make it look a bit tidier. I mean, it's all still tacked just in case I do need to move anything, but with this frame kind of all in place now, I'm confident to remove these temporary braces. So let's cut those off and see if it moves at all. The airbag is pretty much ready to fit, so I want to show you the full experience of the loop going right to the ground here. But the thing that's stopping that now, if I let this down, the tyre is hitting the back of this loop. It's always been my intention to cut a hole in the loop so the tyre is going to stick up out of the loop. I know it's going to look pretty wacky, but I think it'll look pretty cool as well. So I think what I'm going to do is put some paint on the tyre to start with, let the loop down, and then we can see exactly where the tyre is touching at the moment. Maybe put a pilot hole through. We've still got another 100mm to go down, and this is going to hit in about 50mm, but at least we can get it a bit lower, and at least until this bit hits there. Whoa, that was a lot of cutting. In the end, that was the initial one I cut with my hole saw. And then I've got, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times I did. I'll take you in for a closer look in a sec, but the hole starts right up there and goes right down to there. And let me just show you how low it gets. It's close, it's nearly touching. Actually, what's stopping it now is this bar, as I thought, this bar which holds the rear of the loop in place, that is now hitting the rear suspension mount. So I'm not going to go any more with it for now, but I think what I need to do is either move this support up, or depending on how much room I've got inside the panel, I might be able to actually bring it out a bit further. Now the wheel is being pushed over a little bit because, yeah, where this is hitting there, that's pushing the whole thing over. I have cut that hole reasonably square, and I also need to just tidy up these edges as well because they're just from the hole saw and a quick cut with the def wheel. 45mm 45mm off the ground there. Got a bit of work to do, but I think that's where I'm going to leave the back for now. Still don't know if this whole thing design is going to work yet. Is that airbag going to lift this? I don't know if the air pressure in the bag will be enough. Obviously this airbag's designed to go at the back of a car, and there's 2 of them on the rear suspension of a car. Maybe the air pressure will be too low or something. Vehicles with air ride systems have fascinated me for a while now. I just love seeing cars sort of going up and down. I've sort of purchased this airbag. I don't know about the fitting sizes, about airline sizes. A learning curve for me, figuring out what I need. I know when they talk about the fittings, it's half MPT, is it? Quarter MPT, and the lines, etc. It all seems to be imperial sizes they're talking about. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. The kit I bought for the front with the Harley-Davidson air shocks, that's got absolutely tiny little airlines to them. However, this airbag here, obviously designed for a big car, has got a big, I think it's half MPT fitting, is it? I'm not sure. I know it's pretty big, quarter size airline. It's got a few fittings, and it includes a Schrader valve, which is, you know, the valves you get on your car or bicycle, which means I can pump air into it. Obviously, once the whole system's installed, it's going to need a compressor and an air tank, which will hold the compressed air, and then you've got various switches, and that obviously pumps air into the bag. I'm really keen to learn all about them. Any advice, hints, comment below. So I put some thread seal tape stuff around this first adapter. Yeah, this is this pipe, and this is just literally a push fit. Yeah, and then the Schrader valve, just your normal car tyre or bicycle tyre valve. Just push that in. Okay, so let's get the air compressor fired up, and we'll put some air in this and see if it's going to go up and down. I mean, that feels firm already. Got my tyre inflator here, which, by the way, this fitting is next to useless. I need to get a new one of these, but hopefully it should just work with this thing. So just going to put the Schrader valve in there, and hopefully this is going to pump up. Oh yeah. Wow, so why is it not telling me what pressure is? Anyway, you can see that has jumped up. And then this Schrader valve will hold the pressure, a bit like a bicycle tyre, and just we'll fire it in the scooter and see what happens. So there's good and there's bad news. The system definitely works. I'll give you another quick demonstration. That's about ride height at the moment. Let the air out. There you go, it's pretty much laid out there. Top it up a little bit. Sorry, it just puts a smile on my face. So cool. There we go. There you go. The bad news is that is about 20 psi in that airbag, the air pressure in there, and that's at ride height. But 20 psi, I can just push it down. It's just not enough pressure. And what I found was when I'm sat on it with my weight, I need about 80 psi to keep it like from just hitting the ground. So not quite sure what to do about that. Either I fit a smaller airbag where I can pump it up to that 80 psi pressure, which is probably the best thing to do really. I probably don't need this huge great bag. Or what I could do is put some kind of bump stop, by like a reverse bump stop if you like, because if I try and put more pressure in than 20 psi now as well, you can see what's going to happen. That's about 40. Yeah, I mean, that's at 40 and that's about maxed out. I mean, I'll start going to hit panels and stuff. So I could put some kind of, reverse bump stop, or like a strap or something. You know, they have them on off-road vehicles to stop the suspension over articulating. And then I sit on it and it sort of evens it out. I'm not really too sure, but I think for now I'm going to leave it as it is, because I just need to know more about what's happening with the front end. I don't know what kind of air pressure that's going to run at as well. I think the way the air ride system works is that the front and back you can run, you know, obviously different pressures off the same air tank, but I don't know enough about it as yet. So I think we're going to keep it with this at the moment, move on to the front in the next episode. But that has been a huge amount of work to get this far. I was hoping to get an episode out a week ago, but I've spent another week, I mean not obviously full time, but I've lost count of how many hours have gone into it. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and you know, there's a hell of a lot more to do. Obviously the rear end, we need to put some shocks on here as well, obviously, because at the moment, you know, just an airbag, it's really bouncy. So we need some kind of shock, which will probably, you know, go in there somewhere, not too sure. Might even have a shock either side, which might look pretty cool and give it a bit more stability. And then you've got the whole air ride management to go in there somewhere, a tank, compressor, all the rest of it. Obviously we need to do the front end. And once all that's done, we need to find somewhere to locate a fuel tank. All the other bits and pieces that go with, you know, the coil and the electronics and all the rest of it that go with the scooter. I need to find somewhere to mount a rear light now, of course. Now we chop that massive great big hole out the back. Then it just becomes like a normal build on a Lambretta. So anyway, there's a lot of work coming up. But I just want to thank everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. Is this the world's first air ride Lambretta? I'm not sure. Hopefully it'll be of interest to some people anyway. And yeah, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Like us on Facebook and Instagram. We do have merchandise for sale. T-shirts, may even have some mugs by the time you see this video, so go and check that out. Put some links below. Tell all your friends, share, comment, like, all that stuff, and we'll see you on the next one. Okay, cheers. I've got to do this one more time. This is so cool. Woohoo!